have some questions here that we can perhaps address. Probably I can read a couple of them. I saw one here for Vernon. The question, I'm going to paraphrase the question, Vernon. The question was, how come most graduates, specifically from atmospheric sciences, do not go to the academic positions and instead they go to government positions? So if you can address that broad question, that would be great.
Excuse me. Thanks for the question. A number of reasons. I think we had built very strong relationships with NOAA, and so there was sort of a pipeline to NOAA opportunities and NOAA stakeholder opportunities in industry. But the program preceded the development of that pipeline, and so I think a lot of students, from talking with them, frankly, looked at the work-life balance that their professors had at an HBCU or a minority-serving institution, historically Black college, university. You can teach up to 5 classes a semester. That is on top of you writing grants, publishing papers, training students, doing outreach. And so I think in a similar way that I looked at my research mentors as an undergrad or a grad student and said, okay, I like what I see there in terms of what that career looks like. I think they looked at me and said, no, I don't like the hours that this guy works. And I think I could make an impact, at NOAA or at Department of Energy or Department of Defense or at Vaisala or whatever partner we had. And so I think that was a major comment that we got back. In order to work in the academy, someone has to show interest. And frankly, I do not believe that there's a very different thing going on right now in the academy where there is a lot of interest in diverse applicants to faculty positions. Mm-hmm. That is really new. That is really responsive, perhaps reactive to this George Floyd summer or Ahmaud Arbery era. Is it the right thing to do? I think it is. But sustainability is going to be the challenge there, because I think students, as with anybody looking for a job, is going to go, where are the opportunities? And so I think the other thing is it takes a while to develop these trust networks where faculty in other departments are willing to, in their minds, probably take a risk on an African-American or a Latina or Native American junior faculty person. And that risk is conceived as being outsized relative to their white counterparts. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I think, as Rita said, if you look at gender, the gender balance in geoscience is poor. So
thank you. Thank you. Here's a really broad question that perhaps I would like to ask the three of you to address. I will read the question this way. Imagine what we all could accomplish if we could just be students, educators, or scientists without obstacles constantly being placed between us and success. We could use our minds and energies to create, innovate, resolve problems, and inspire others to succeed. How do we get there? Gilda, would you like to start with that question? Because this really, it's a very tantalizing question, in my opinion.
It is tantalizing, but I think one way of getting there is to focus on changing the systems, change the culture, change the environment. Too much of our approach has been around fix those broken individuals, make them more like the majority. There's a normalization. So normalized is basically majority white men in these STEM environments. So that's considered normal. Then everything else is considered othered. So that's one problem We also have myths like myths of meritocracy, like challenging and busting the myths. So going away from that kind of like fix the broken individuals to fix the broken systems, create cultures and environments that support everyone, I think is one strategy. And then this idea, like we know ultimately at the end of the day, people want to feel like they belong. They want to feel like their contributions are valued. It's not that hard to say, I'm going to recognize you. I'm going to pay you what you're worth. I'm going to not overload you with a whole bunch of service commitments so you can't get anything else done. And then hold it against you for doing it. So, like there are behaviors that we could easily change so that these environments are more supportive. So I think that's the approach that I would take for this bigger issue.
Thank you. Lydia, do you want to tackle that question yourself too?
It's true that that when individuals are unburdened by the extraneous factors that are only distracting, that you don't spend energy worrying about those other things or even thinking about them. And it's clear that just, physiologically speaking, we don't have unlimited energy, although some of us may appear to. In fact, any time we spend thinking about X takes away time from doing or thinking about why. And so Monica's correct that if those constraints were not there, I think that alone would make it more possible for many more talented people to enter this realm, which by itself is pretty challenging. It's a lot of fun, of course, but it's quite challenging.
Yeah. Well, there is another question that I think perhaps all of you can address. The question reads like this: we know how important role models are. Let me see. I think I need to go back because this keeps changing here.
Jose, can I make a quick comment?
Yes, please. Of course.
The last. Yeah, I think I'd like to emphasize that something I think was alluded to, but I want to emphasize that too often the challenge of fixing the problem is laid on the shoulders of the marginalized. And I think it has to be all hands on deck. It absolutely has to be. Every leader in the university needs to be accountable for what the university looks like, from leadership levels down to student levels. Student levels have already changed, right? Yeah. We know what the student levels are looking like. But when we look at the leadership, we look at the decision-making cabinets, we look at those levels, those have not changed probably since the 70s.
Yeah.
And there has to be accountability all the way down, and everyone has to be working on this. And there has to be a reward structure. So policy has to follow words.
Yeah. Okay. Let's end this session on this question, which I'm going to read here. We know how important role models are in developing future leaders. There are many great and successful professionals from underrepresented groups that are not known to the public and underrepresented students. How can we overcome this situation? And I think if you can give a brief remark from each of you. Let's start with you, Vernon. Vernon, you're muted.
Okay, sorry, I was caught in the chat. The question was.
The question is the role of role models. And we have so many people in the country who are successful professionals from underrepresented groups. How do we tap into that vast resource, if we can call it that way?
Oh, okay. Well, I think one of the chats folks, they put a resource in there. I think that social media is doing an excellent job of that, where before the isolation was really profound. Black in geosciences or Geo-Latinas, or there's so many groups that you can connect to. So I think part of it is not incumbent upon the students to find the role models. I think some of us out here can make space to connect back is one thing. But I do think the professional societies, I think Gilda talked about this, professional societies can do a lot in terms of providing that connectivity.
Yeah, thank you, Vernon.
I'll add to what Vernon was saying. I think you need top down and bottom up, and social media can really help with the bottom up for sure. But there's stuff that institutions can do themselves, like trumpet and promote your successes. I mean, there are people who are there who are doing well, like get those stories out there and then amplify them. And so a lot of what happens is we have to go tell our own stories. Well, we want our voices out there, but you are recognized by recognized others.
Yeah.
So institutions that are already recognized, organizations, agencies, whatever, can actually help get those stories out there as well.
Yeah, yeah. Lydia?
And I would only add that those of us who are, on the more senior side of the spectrum, one of the things that all of us can do better, which data shows we don't do as well, is to nominate each other, to put forward our colleagues and the younger folks, put them up for those awards, propose them for memberships, and help. One of the things, at least in my community, we need is to let people know, and also in the Native American community, I believe, is that too much modesty is not a good thing.
Yeah, yeah.
That there are times when you must blow your own horn.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me ask Vernon to address that point, because I know that Vernon occupies a leadership position right now with the American Meteorological Society. And most professional societies get a very limited nomination of colleagues from underrepresented groups, many of whom are really meritorious for awards. Vernon, can you give us a little bit of the background here as to why that predicament exists at the national level?
Well, I think it comes down to who is nominating who and who are making those decisions on the nomination packages. I think that minoritized individuals are quite often nose to the grindstone. That means that you are not paying attention to the deadlines and to the opportunities that are coming up. And the people who know your work, who you're working with shoulder to shoulder, also have their heads down. And the larger community is largely dismissive of the types of work, and whether it be in the social space or equity space, or be in the nexus of science and social equity, or even science. And so there are these other networks that are going on that say, we're going to make sure that these groups are nominated. This group is recognized. This academic lineage is recognized. And a lot of times we're not in those conversations because of our positionality. And so that's something that I think, again, I like the top down and bottom up. I don't think it should all be on the minoritized communities to generate more applications. We should be more cognizant of that, because that's part of how the game is played. But if we're going to be innovative, and we're going to be, I think professional societies could actually be more innovative than how they are, because it's an inbreeding system. And so if you're really trying to be inclusive, interrogate your system, interrogate where the barriers are, and come up with something innovative, instead of saying, you fix that problem. We don't nominate anybody because, you don't send us their names. Well, you do some work, because we're doing work already.
Let me just add that it's still true that for most of us, our mentors are going to be white men. That is still the reality of the world in many, many fields, not so much in biology anymore, for sure, but still in many fields, that's the case. And so one of the things that we can do is we figure out ways to help our folk go to those people. Were it not for my white mentors, I don't know where I would be.
On that note, I would like to close this session, but I wish to thank Vernon, Gilda, and Lydia for leading this conversation. We did not address all the questions on the chat, but we will have a plenary right after the next session. The next session is session 3 on leaders in the corporate world and foundation.